Hey everybody, this is Chet with 10 Stories coming at you with another production pro tip. Today we'll be focusing on how to set up an Illustrator file to be used in After Effects. This is the second part of a two-part tip where we'll be importing our Illustrator file into After Effects and exploring the possibilities of animation with a properly set up file. First, create a new After Effects project and import the Illustrator file. Before clicking Open in the dialog box, let's look at the Import As drop-down menu. It usually defaults to footage, but for our purposes, let's set that to composition, retain layer sizes. Footage will import the file as a flattened image. This is useful for when you don't need to animate any individual pieces of your file, or if you're importing only a single layer. Alternatively, composition brings your Illustrator file in with each layer separated how it was in Illustrator, centered around the canvas size. Choosing retain layer sizes tells After Effects that you want your layers to be centered around the object, not the canvas size. Once we bring in the composition, let's open it up and take a look. Make sure that you have multiple layers and that they're named properly. If something seems to be incorrect, review the steps from part 1 and make sure your Illustrator file is set up properly. Next, hit Command K on Mac or Control K on Windows to check your composition settings. Everything looks right here for this project, so let's click OK. Then make sure that your layers all go to the end of the timeline, so just drag that over. Then, we won't be using our background layer for anything, so just give that a lock. Now we have our layers set up nicely so we can do some basic animations to the icons up top. Select the 3 circles and move the timeline to 1 second. Then add a scale keyframe and move back to the first frame. Set your scale to 0, and let's ease the keyframes in with the graph editor. Next, let's bring in those icons using an opacity animation. Nothing fancy here, just showing some of the capabilities of having individual layers brought in from Illustrator. Move to the first frame and set your opacity to 0. Let's bring that actually to about frame 10 and add an ease in for the opacity. Okay. Now for the more important part of this exercise, creating After Effects shapes from Illustrator layers. It's important to note that when a shape layer is created, it will no longer refer to the Illustrator file, and therefore it won't update if changes are made to the file. With that said, let's select the top and bottom lines and the dotted box layers. Right-click on any of their names and click Create Shapes from Vector Layer. Press U to twirl the menus closed and you'll see 3 new shape layers with the designation Outlines added to the layers. These are now After Effects shape layers, and they can do some pretty cool things that we will only cover the basics of. Let's focus on the dotted box layer. If we twirl down its attributes and check its contents, we will see each path within the shape layer. Select your group and click the triangle here and click Trim Paths. This will do nothing at first, but let's twirl down the Trim Paths attributes. Go to 1 second on the timeline and click the stopwatch on the end parameter. It should be at 100% right now. Scroll back to the beginning of your timeline and bring that end parameter to 0%. You should see the box wrap around nicely into one of the corners. Let's give an easy ease on these keyframes and take a look. It's a little fast, so let's just bring that over real quick. Now let's do the same process to the top and bottom lines. Conveniently, you're able to copy and paste keyframes into other groups, and After Effects will automatically apply the corresponding effect. So select the keyframes and Command C or Control C if you're on Windows. And then select the groups we're looking for and press Command V or Control V. And just like that, those paths are trimmed and animated. And right now, you can see that they're animated, but it's a little boring to have both paths going the same direction. Select your bottom line and twirl down its attributes and click this button here to reverse the path direction. Then let's reorder our layers real quick so things aren't overlapping where they shouldn't be. And lastly, let's spice up our dotted line a little bit by having it animate along its path. Select the dotted box outlines layer and press UU to view all of its modified properties. Under the stroke property, there's a dashes subproperty. Click that triangle to twirl it up, and then click it again to twirl it back down, and we can see all of its subproperties. Note the offset parameter, and Alt-click or Option-click the stopwatch there to create an expression for this property. Type in time times -30 in the expression field and click elsewhere on the timeline to accept. Now the dotted line's offset property will count down at a rate of 30 points per second. To modify the speed of animation or to change direction, simply modify the number and After Effects will recalculate the expression. That's going to wrap it up for this tip. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, smash that like button, subscribe to 10 Stories, and stay tuned for the next installment of Pro Tips. This is Chet with 10 Stories, and we'll see you in the next one.